Welcome, everyone, to Elevate with V. I'm so excited to be here. This podcast was inspired by my own healing journey. I aspire to share amazing healers and coaches who have gone through their own healing journeys, and they're here to help us elevate on our journey so we can keep aligning with our soul's calling and gifts. Today, I have Andrea with me. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Vanita. So nice to be here with you.
Yay! So I wanted to introduce Andrea. She's an intuitive gene keys guide who helps radiant creators of all types to understand their unique gene keys profiles and walk the golden path so that they can expand their minds and open their hearts to unseen possibilities in their brands and in their life. She is passionate about helping her clients scale their vision by understanding and aligning with their soul mission so that they can serve and create with full focus, prosperity, joy, energy, and satisfaction. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much. I am honored and delighted to be here today.
Yay! So I wanted to share that Andrea and I actually connected through a mutual contact, Angie. We were her clients. She was assisting us in launching our podcast. And so I want to give a shout out to her. She has an amazing podcast. Please go check it out. It's called Four Things for Your Podcast. I also had the opportunity to join Andrea's group not too long ago for a Gene Keys Prosperity mini workshop, which was so much fun. I learned so much. And just to say to Andrea that I just love your energy. I feel your passion and your authenticity, like how heart-centered and aligned you are. And just, your excitement for the work that you do. I just absolutely love it. And I love how you are so focused on helping each of us align to our soul mission. I just feel your excitement and joy in the work that you do and wanting to help others to create the life that they desire.
Yes, to all of that. And it was really only a matter of time before we were on each other's podcasts. And I'll be getting you onto mine as well in the upcoming future, especially because we met through Angie's wonderful program, but also because I feel like our missions are so aligned with just slightly different pathways to get there. But even as you described what your podcast is about, it's amazing how resonant it is.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's so interesting. Like, even before I connected with you, Angie was like, oh my God, you and Andrea, like, I just
Yeah.
can't wait for you guys to meet because they're just synergy. And I remember the very first call that we both were on, I was like, yes, like we're gonna have, great conversations and connections. And then as I learned more about the work that you were doing, I was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, yes, absolutely. And I have to be honest, when I came in to do the mini workshop and I got to watch you doing what you love and embodying it, I was just like, I mean, I was like even more exciting. I'm like, I already knew that you were amazing, but it was just like, oh, it just got kicked up a couple of notches.
Oh, that's so kind. And it was so amazing to have you there. It really was. I mean, it was just, I think that you are already in that place of working with knowledge at that high level. So it was just a delight and an honor to have you there. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so as you know, the show is highlighting healing journeys and how
Yeah.
we've kind of navigated through all these different, let's call them storms, to get to
Yeah.
our silver linings, to get to where we are right now, where we're able to kind of share, more of our uh, gifts and light with others. So I wanted to check in with you and ask you what event or events kind of led you into stepping into your healing journey.
Such a great question. And I was actually just having a conversation with a client recently about how those challenging points in life, we have to have them because we have to be pulled out of our comfort zone to go searching for that next level. And I can't even isolate one. I mean, I feel like my life has been one after the other. of of just driving forward. It's just my nature of evolving, 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 and it's not always comfortable, right? It could be a period of depression, or it could be a period of boredom, or a sense of restlessness, and so my work just keeps evolving. And I started in the coaching world about 10 years ago in nutritional therapy. And in some ways, I feel like I'm still doing the same work. I always say I'm helping my clients to leverage their power to get reconnected to their own inner authority. And in the beginning, that was through nutrition, and that vitality piece is still there. But now it's moved into a much more esoteric and abstract conceptual place, but still grounded in the day to day of what we're really doing with our lives. And I think that this idea of how we are pushed to evolve, it's actually written into the gene keys. Even as you were just talking, in the gene keys, everyone gets their own profile, and every profile has areas of life, and every area of life has a specific gene key, and each one of those has a shadow frequency. That is exactly that. And we always say that the gift is in the shadow, and you even used the word gifts just now when you were talking. So it was like, yes, that's what we have to have, right? We have to have that thing that makes us question, am I really where I'm meant to be right now? I must not be, because something doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good.
Wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing. So I'm going to take you back though, Andrea, because when we talk
Mm.
about like these moments, like all of us have at moments, but were there one or two that were just sort of like, for me, it was something very big that happened that
Yeah.
literally I felt like I was just planted to the ground and been like, "Whoo,
Yeah.
okay, got to pick myself back up." Was there
Yeah.
anything like that that happened, or was it
Yeah.
little moments that happened that kind of were like, okay, I think I need to like shift and learn and move into a new space and work through some of my shadows? What was your experience?
Yeah, there were two. I can never pick just one, right? I mean, there were so many, but one recent one that was so clear like that, that was really like this moment, right? That was around 2 years ago now. Is it 2 years? Yeah, 2 years ago. I had been successfully running a nutrition program. I had one-to-one nutrition clients, nutritional therapy. I had a year-long program called Radiant Health Blueprint, and we were doing all kinds of great things in there. And to invite people into that program, I would do, as I do now, a series of events, free offerings during the year that would give people a taste of the work and then invite them in. And I had done a couple of those, and something had felt just really flat. Like I just wasn't able to bring the energy in the same way. I'd been doing it for a little while, and I just felt like somehow what had been exciting was now tedious. And so that there were two in a row. There was one in the May, and then one in July, and it just wasn't working. And I was like, what is going on here? Because I had had some prior that had been amazing and brought in all kinds of new people and new energy, and this just wasn't working. And so I really went into that kind of classic dark night of the soul, just really a place of despair. I had been working for so long to get to this place where things were working on all levels, and I just felt like I had like hopeless. I just didn't know what to do. And it took some time. It was a few months of just being completely devastated in a way that probably from the outside people would not understand, like what's going on with you. But that was the process that actually was the break from the way I had been doing things and what I was focusing on. And it opened me up to running into the gene keys, stumbling over the gene keys, getting completely consumed into the gene keys. And that was the beginning of the process where I rewrote everything from the standpoint of like, oh, this is the work that I'm supposed to be doing. This is the work. And it's taken some time to bring that fully to the front and start to get the momentum with that. But that's where that process started. And then the time before that that came to mind when you were talking was in my early 20s. I had just finished my Bachelor of Architecture. I have a Bachelor of Architecture from Cornell University, little known fact. from a
What?
long time ago. And I had just finished that degree, and I had this vision in my mind that I was going to be moving to San Francisco and getting a job with a firm. And this was the early 90s, and there was a recession going on. And so I had written letters. This is back a day, writing letters, and had gotten some responses back. Or I think I was even calling some firms out there, and everybody was just saying, "Oh, we just let 15 people go. We just let 10 people go. We just let 5 people go." So I was, oh. So I ended up, instead of that, going to Taos, New Mexico, to help one of my professors build a hybrid Earthship. And I thought this would just be kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this for a few months and then go to San Francisco, pick up where I left off. But no, it ended up being that same kind of, all of a sudden realizing like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be for a time. And I might be meant to be doing something completely different. So there's a couple for you.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I so want to dive into that, but I'm like, I know we have to kind of talk about GPs, but that is so fascinating. I absolutely love it. And I was going to backtrack for just a moment to ask
Yeah.
you what actually led you into sort of this health and nutrition. Was it just
Yeah.
something that always interested you, or was it something that you experienced where you're like, I want to offer this because you didn't get it? I just wanted to ask that really quickly before we
Yeah.
moved on.
That's a whole nother story right there too. So at the time, I had been in photography for 10 years. That's what I pivoted to photography right around the age that around age 30, maybe somewhere around there. Gone back to school for that. And I was in the world of commercial photography, working as an assistant and doing my own work. And I had my two daughters, my two amazing daughters. They were born in 2007 and 2010. And we almost have two teenagers in the house. After May, we'll have two teenagers. 12
Wow.
will turn to 13. And I had gotten to a place in 2011 where I was really just so unhealthy. I was so unskilled in taking care of myself. I was stressed out. I was not really handling being the mom of two young kids and still trying to do my business and still trying to find my way in the world. And I just knew something had to change. And I stumbled across two or three different ways of really changing how I was eating and how I was moving. And I had a massive transformation over a period of about 4 or 5 months. Thankfully, it was a beautiful time. And that's when I heard this calling to learn more. And at first, it was just, I just want to learn more. I just want to learn more. And I searched high and low for some kind of a program that I could do from within my heavy schedule. I found this nutritional therapy program that had an in-person component in Seattle where I live and an online component, and I had a friend who wanted to do it also, and so that was the beginning of it. And as soon as I got into that, it was also this call. It was a call that was perfect for that time to serve, to step into being a guide in this world. And that was a massive transition to move from photography to that. And I didn't think at the time I was leaving photography behind, but the thing I've always struggled with my entire life is how much time there is in the day. And I went right into that as a business. And thank goodness I did, because that was not only an amazing journey of my own and of working with clients, but it taught me how to start to create a business where I was working one to one, where I was working as a coach, where I was working supporting clients and creating programs and all of that. And I use every bit of that in the work that I do now. It's what led me to this. And ultimately, I think what drew me to that work is the same as what draws me to my work now. It's somehow removing the obstacles that get in the way of all of us being in our full power, of all of us being able to be fully present with all of our resources and to know what we're here to do and how to do it. And I saw countless examples in my nutrition practice of people who would quit jobs and move to another city, or they would leave a relationship or get into a relationship, or they would take up doing something they were never able to do before, or they would just be a lot happier and just have a different energy in their life. And so it's not really that different. I'm just a little more direct about it now. I'm just cutting to the chase a little bit more now.
Ooh, I love this. Oh my God, this all ties in so beautifully. And just so everyone who's listening knows, like Andrea and I, right before we started to record, we were talking about this whole idea of like, we have all these amazing experiences in our life.
Mhm.
They don't all feel good at the time that they're happening, but when we can sit in our chair now and look back and be like, wow, like everything is so purposeful. And it's just how I like to look at it. So we keep adding all these tools into our life box,
Yeah.
and it's like nothing is ever wasted. It's like it's all just like layering, and it all kind of fits together so beautifully. So I love that it's bringing
Yes.
back to Gene Keys.
Yes.
And
Yes. All
so
paths lead back to the gene keys.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so coming back to that, I know you at some point we're talking about like how you kind of started to like get into Gene Keys. Can I ask you if you did any work or exploration of human design, or did you just focus in on Gene Keys? Because I know that people that are listening have probably heard of both, but I don't know what you
Yes.
heard more. So I would love for you to share your
Yes.
experience and what the connection is.
It's such a great question because they are so connected. And for those that don't know, the originator, the author of the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd, who received the transmission of the Gene Keys and then so eloquently shaped it into a a whole lineage of knowledge that we can now work with. So grateful for his work. He was an advanced student of Ra, the originator of human design. So he studied for many, many years. And so there are a lot of overlap, a lot of similarities, but also very different. Very different. It's the Gene Keys is a synthesis, so it has a lot of different things in it, and yet it is also very related to that, but they just have a very different energy and a very different approach. Interestingly enough, I had a good friend who told me years ago that that human design was incredible, that it was so powerful, that I should look into it. For some reason, it just never grabbed me, and I don't know why that is. I just felt like I didn't have that pull, right? You know, that pull that pulls you towards something. I thought it was beautiful and it looked interesting, and I wanted to get some readings, but I just didn't have that irresistible, insatiable thirst to know more about it. I just knew it was there. Someday I would get to it. So I kind of I guess I kind of stepped around it and went directly to the Gene Keys. I have since done about 3 beautiful readings with those who are advanced in human design, just because I felt like I should have a little bit of that knowledge. And I have some books. Actually, I have a couple books on human design that Richard Rudd wrote. And I know that there will be a time when I will look more deeply into it, but I also kind of love that that's not my thing. Gene Keys is my thing. So I think that's really beautiful on its own. I will also say that I have been a deeply engaged student of astrology for about 30 years. It's really important to me. It finds its way into my work. I like to give astro weather reports to my clients, like when we do meetings and things like that, or when we have group gatherings, because I can't not, because I like to always know what's going on. It tells me a little bit of the energies of psychology that are out there in the world. There's a correlation there. It's very mysterious, right? It's a language of correlation and symbols. But I haven't ever done that specifically professionally, but it's absolutely been a part of it. And it's also very woven into both the Gene Keys and human design. So that's the answer for that. I feel like the energy of human design is more specific and more directed, if that's a word. It's almost like a dashboard with dials, and it kind of gives you very specific um, a set of guidelines for what it's telling you there. Very powerful. And I feel like the Gene Keys is almost just a little softer. It's a little more open to interpretation. It's a little more non directional, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I so love what you shared because, it's one of those things where people are like, well, what should I go for? Like, are they
Mhm.
connected? Do I have to start with human design and then go to Gene Keys? Can I just do Gene Keys by itself? And I remember that I was very drawn to human design because some other people in my circle were like, "Oh my God, I'm like looking into it and let me read some information about you." And so I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And so I did a little mini workshop, kind of how you do like mini workshops. And I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like, oh, I have a hunger to like know more. And then I heard about Gene Keys, and then someone that I know who I actually did a podcast episode with was all into it. She's like, I'm studying it and I'm going to do a study group. I'm going to be adding it to my services. Will you be like a guinea pig so I can like use you as like, I'll take your chart and I'll talk to my group so that they can kind of see what it is. And then, hopefully they'll be interested and then we can kind of do a study. I'm like, oh, sure, I'll go for it. I have no problem. And so that's when she was kind of sharing during that video. And I was just like, oh, what is this?
Mm.
And I just, something about like just drew me in, kind of more than human design did. And it's kind of exactly what you're describing. And I'm probably not going to use the right terminology. So anyone who's listening, who's all into human design, please do not be offended. But it was very much about, I felt there's like more breathing room for me with
Mhm.
like Gene Keys. I felt like it's a little bit more open to interpretation. And I just, for some reason, it just felt like there was a deeper spiritual, esoteric connection for me. And human design is really interesting because there's a lot of astrology that they pull into it, which, like, I don't have a ton of connection with, but there was just something that was drawing me more towards the Gene Keys. And then when you did your mini workshop and I got to come and enjoy that, I was just like, okay, this definitely feels way more my kind of like interest and the way that you were
Yeah.
sharing the information. And I just was like totally drawn in. So I love that you shared this with us because it's just saying, hey, check both of them out, but like see what calls
Yes.
maybe both of them do, or maybe just one of them do. And it's okay. They are connected, but you can also kind of study them independently. And
Yes.
so that's kind of a nice thing to know.
Yes, and I do know there are practitioners out there who are blending them in beautiful ways, and more power to them. I think that it's interesting what you said about the astrology piece. It's absolutely in the gene keys, but it's more subtle. It's woven in. It's not so overt. You wouldn't know it if you didn't know where it was. So it's interesting. And I was also going to mention too the strong influence of, I was looking to see if I have my, I don't think I have my book handy here, but the strong influence of the I Ching. It's part of both of them. And that even comes maybe a little bit more to the fore in the gene keys. The gene keys work with 64 gene keys, and they are the hexagrams of the I Ching. So they are the 64 hexagrams of that ancient text, thousands of years old, that are now in this modernized and personalized version, but it's still there. And I actually really love to sometimes read the original I Ching. For instance, I have Gene Key 34 in my purpose sphere in my Gene Keys profile, and that is also hexagram 34 in the I Ching. So I can kind of get a different meaning by reading both of those. And I look back to your questions about history. I have this dog-eared, tattered little paperback I Ching that I've been using since I was 22 years old. So it's been there all along. It's like it's woven through. And I was talking a little bit too right before we got on about how this work has its own consciousness. And I think all of this is the work coming through, right? It's the consciousness of the I Ching, and the consciousness of the gene keys is now coming forward because it's of this time. It's a synthesis that is of this time. And so now it's time to get out into the world and support the evolution of the collective that's happening at this time, but it's pulling in these ancient knowledges just in a different way.
Oh, I love that so much. So I am going to ask for a lot of people who might not have heard of I Ching. Could you please
Yeah.
share with us what that is, please?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I have to make sure I get the details right. I've looked this up countless times, but I also just I don't want to get like anything wrong here. But the I Ching, and some of your listeners will be well versed in this, but it is basically it's a text from between the 10th and the 4th centuries BC, which is a pretty wide bracket. So clearly they're not totally sure, but it is basically like an ancient text that was used for guidance and decision making. So here's another one that says it was believed to be written by Fuzi around 1000 BC. So, old, thousands of years old. And it's kind of like, I always call the gene keys an archetype, or it's an archetypal blueprint for living. And I think the I Ching was that of its time. And when you read it now, some of the language, and there's different translations, but it sounds so kind of old fashioned in a way, or it's just kind of very formal. And so, but what it goes through in those 64 archetypes are all of these different phases and characteristics of what it is to experience life as a human, with a certain amount of advice around that. And so it's this kind of qualities, these kind of characteristics. And then you see that echoed in the gene keys, but in this more modernized, more accessible version.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I personally did not know a lot about, I Ching, but I was like learning through your class. I was like, oh, okay, I've
Mm-hmm.
not really heard too much about this. So I love the context of that. So, what I also love about a lot of the things that you're sharing is, you're definitely someone like me who's just like a multi-passionate. Like we just
Mm-hmm.
love so many things. And, it's almost sort of like, oh my gosh, how could I do all of them at once? And we know that's not possible.
Yeah.
So we have to be
Yes.
like, okay, what am I going to focus on now?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like all these different experiences that we've had now all kind of plug in to like what you're doing right now, which is so beautiful. Like you said, even the
Yeah.
astrology piece, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like so perfect, such a beautiful component of gene keys. So I would love for us to kind of dive a little bit more, for you to kind of share a little bit more about gene keys for those who might not have
Yeah.
heard about it. I know we've kind of talked a little bit around it, but I would love for you to be able to kind of share, what exactly it is. And also, I know that you're actually like a certified Gene Keys practitioner. I don't even know the right terminology. You'll have to help me here, but
For sure, for sure. And it is such a dense and rich storehouse of knowledge. So I always say, be patient as you get into it. And I think one thing that's wonderful about the Gene Keys is that a little goes a long way. You start to get returns right away if you step into it, even if you feel like so much of it is still inscrutable, right? At the moment that you're just getting into it. So I encourage anyone who's feeling called to take that step. And also, I always point back to the work, and I'll share with all of your listeners and viewers, if you want to see your personal Gene Keys profile completely free, you can go to genekeys.com and create your profile, and I'll pull up a picture of one so you can see kind of what it looks like. And it's also called the golden pathway, or the hologenetic pathway, and it just gives you a diagram of and a picture. This is mine, so I'll just show it. It looks kind of like that, and it's like a pathway, and it gives you a diagram of all these areas of life, like life's work and purpose. Some make more sense than others before you get into it. There's one called Pearl and one called Culture. You might not know what that is right off the bat, but there's also evolution and vocation and life's work, all those kind of things. So in each of those spheres, through this synthesis of these different lineages, through your birth date information, you are able to see the gene keys that are calculated to be your own personal unique gene keys within each of those spheres. So this is a very powerful map to show you these archetypes that are so active in your life. And no two profiles are going to be alike. They're all a different mix of these different archetypes. And each one of those gene keys has three frequencies to it. And I think this is so important to understanding the blessing of this work. Each gene key has a shadow frequency, which is kind of like our limiting beliefs or where we get stuck or what holds us back, or even we might attract that energy in the other people that we're interacting with. And then there's a gift frequency, which is the creative frequency of that archetype. It's where we're able to be intentional and be creative and move forward with beautiful ideas and offerings. And then at the highest level, there's what's called the Siddhi, Siddhi, which is kind of like the highest essence of that frequency. Maybe not a place that we get to spend a lot of time in this life, but it tells us what's possible. It's a kind of divine frequency, or you might call it a future human frequency, what's possible. And so we see in that, in this profile, where else are you going to get a map that's so specific of exactly what might be tripping you up in each area of these of life that these spheres show you, so that you can truly engage with it in an intentional way, and that shows you, once you do engage with that, here's the creativity that's available to you in a very abstract way. So it's not boxing you in, but it's giving you a flavor of that, which everybody I've ever worked with always feels resonates so deeply, but it activates something in them to have that awareness. And then to show you, each and every single human, you have also these 11 divine frequencies that are inherent to you, that are part of you, that we all have. We all have this divine quality. And here it is in specifics and words, exactly what you are bringing into this three-dimensional world through the interface of your physical body. Hello, vitality, there it still is, right? This divine frequency that's coming through you. And the more that we can engage with this work in a way that allows, accepts, and embraces the shadows, the more we can open up the channel to allow more of the gift and the divine frequency to come in. So that's really the beauty and the majesty of this work, is how it opens up possibilities, how it accelerates, how it activates. And the other thing that I think is really beautiful about this work is that it's a work of contemplation. There isn't anything that you have to do. I always come up with lots of things that we can do when we work together, and I see my job as an interface to this work and a bridge into it. So I'm always trying to bring a kind of sense of what is essential. But the only thing that is required to benefit from the knowledge from this work is to contemplate, to take it in, to let it work on you, to create enough space in your life that you can contemplate, that you can reflect. And from that point, you just watch the magic happen.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love how you described that. It was so amazing. And the thing that's jumping out to me so much is that we can just be. But I think the key thing
Mhm.
is just stepping into the awareness is where the work really starts, right? Just being aware once you have information, I think allows that energy to start to work. And something else that you said that was really interesting to me about how, say like what we would call like the highest level of each one of these keys, we may or may not be able to experience that in this lifetime. And for me, so much about what I feel with gene keys is it's about like a vibration, it's about a frequency.
Mhm.
And so for me, I feel it is attainable if you can vibrate at that level. But the only way
Mhm.
you can do that is you still have to start at the shadow. You can't just jump up there and be like, sure,
That's
I'm
right.
going to be in my most elevated place. Yes, you can get there. However, you do have to kind of start with like the shadow
Mhm.
aspect. And I remember reading the information, like, for like the specific keys that we were working on through the mini workshop. And I was like blown away, like how much I resonated with the information. And
Mhm.
I'm thinking, how is this going to apply to everybody? This can't be. And then when I read it, I was like, Oh, wow. I totally get it because it's really interesting. I think it's also the way that it's written or explained.
Hmm.
It's more, it opens things more versus constrict. I don't know if I'm doing a good job
Yes,
explaining, but it's just something about it.
I
Like,
agree.
read it, there's an expansion. There's like
Yes.
space for exploration. There's room for exploration. That's kind of what's coming to me. Is like there's room for exploration.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. And I use the word activate. It activates, that awareness activates already such a different shift in how we see ourselves and also what is possible. You know, what is possible? The fact that you see, number one, a map of your own shadows, number two, the realization that everybody has this map of shadows, which we know on an intellectual level, but there's something subtle that happens when it's an equalizer. You know, your shadows are not necessarily any worse or harder. There's no judgment on you for having these shadows. We all have our unique set of shadows. And in fact, they are the gift. Without them, we would never reach the level of creativity that we're here to reach. So it's a beautiful metaphor the entire way. And then to have the specificity, we all want to know more about ourselves, right? Because we're all trying to figure out, why am I here? What am I doing? What's the best way for me to move forward? How do I serve? What am I meant to be doing? And what will bring me the most fulfillment? And I think anything that supports that journey is so welcomed. And what's beautiful about the openness of this work is it's not going to tell you something that's so specific that it takes away your free will. It's just going to activate an awareness that allows you to almost then become more creative within that frequency of deciding what that is for you.
I love that. That's the word, activate. I absolutely love that. That is so amazing. So I wanted to take a moment to just kind of share, like, obviously you are so deep into this work and you have workshops, you've got programs. If you wanted to kind of share, if people are kind of getting started and
Yeah.
they're interested, like, what should they be doing? What would be some good first steps?
Yeah, absolutely. And oh, you asked also about the practitioner. So I am certified as a Gene Keys guide, which goes towards answering this question. And it's very important as a guide. Part of our training is that we're not telling anyone else how their journey should be. We're supporting each person on their own journey. That was really important to Richard Rudd when he wrote the guides program. So I take that to heart. And I also take to heart always pointing back to the work. So I always say that each one of us who are guides, we are called to present the work in our unique way. And that doesn't mean it's the only way, nor does it mean that you necessarily need a guide. Those who need a guide will be drawn to it. There'll be soul contract, but you can also continue your journey simply with the genekeys.com and with the books. Now, as far as what I offer, I see my specific role, my unique flavor of being a guide is to accelerate the understanding and to bridge the work to those that might not be able to or interested in spending the hours of getting into it and reading all of the books and doing all of the things, and that those that might want to incorporate this work faster into what they're doing in a way that fits into their life. So I think there's a real need for that right now. I think there's a real call for all of us to be doing that. I also take a specific interest in bringing this work to other entrepreneurs. And just by default, that's going to be those that are working in spaces of expanding consciousness, light workers, healers, coaches, teachers, because those are the people that are going to be attracted to the gene keys, right? So I almost don't even need to say that part. But what I do say is gene keys for entrepreneurship to me is very exciting because it's well, let me back up. I feel like in this kind of meta way, the Gene Keys is what helped me to finally break through the confusion of what am I meant to be bringing to the world? How am I meant to be doing business? What is it that I'm here to be doing with my clients? Because just like you, I can take up almost anything. I can learn this, that, or the other thing. I can teach this, that, or the other thing. And it almost gets very confusing, right? So, what is the essential offering? What is my essential soul work that I'm here to do in the form of a business? So I love that. I'm so excited about the idea of leveraging other entrepreneurs into a more focused and more powerful level of their work. And so that's where some of my offerings are going. And specifically, it's great timing. I'm not sure when this will be playing, but whenever you're watching this, it will still be available at some point. Next week, I'll be doing an offering called Shine, which is a soul brand clarity offering. It's to get really clear on that soul offer, that soul work offer, that thing that you're bringing to the world. So, this integration of entrepreneurship and your Gene Keys profile, I think is very exciting. And then I'll be offering in February a 30-day program called Light Speed, which I'll offer again down the road, which is about using the prosperity sequence in the Gene Keys to supercharge that clarity of what we're doing, who we're working with, what we're offering, how we're working with them, how we're getting our message out. And all of those are reflected in these different spheres: the brand sphere, the culture sphere, the pearl sphere, the vocation sphere. So we're really going to be working with that in an active way, bringing that ethereal and esoteric and conceptual knowledge down to the real 3D level of, okay, how does this give you insight to accelerate this process, to get really clear, to open the channel within you that is here to bring that divine energy through you into the world in the form of your offering, in the form of the work and the transformation that you're offering to your clients. So very excited about that. And then the final thing I'll say is that the deeper, longer core program, my core program, is a full year spent in a small group setting. It's called Radiant Creators. And in that one, I mean, that is just the ultimate. That's where we take a whole year and we work together, both one on one and in this group, to go through and work through the entire profile, your entire profile, with enough time and enough support to really activate everything in there and to become the full radiant creator that you're here to be.
Wow, that's amazing. I just got excited just you sharing all that information.
Yeah.
There's so much
Yeah.
energy that comes with it, right? And it's just like
Yes.
it's powerful. It really is powerful work. And I just love the details that you've shared and obviously all the work that you're doing. It's such a beautiful opportunity if people are called. I know I personally am one of those people where I love this information, but I would definitely not be someone who'd be like, oh, let me go read the 2 books and do this and that. I'm like, oh gosh, no, that's
Yeah.
definitely not up my alley. I would much rather just go to someone who has the
Mm.
expertise, who can help to guide me
Yeah.
into the pieces that I need. So I love that you've created all these different support structures and a way for you to channel your passion and your light to others. And I love your focus on like entrepreneurs and the type of entrepreneurs. And you, like you said,
Yeah.
it's so perfect where it's going to be a certain kind of person that's attracted to this work.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's sort of like you already know the people that are going to be coming your way, which is so beautiful. So I love it. Oh my gosh, Andrea, you and I have already chatted for an hour, and I was like, oh my goodness, we could like, just keep going, but just so fascinating. I just wanted to make sure that this is
Yeah.
such a beautiful, I don't like to say modality, but it's like another tool, another resource
Yeah.
that I wanted to introduce it to people who might not have heard of it or might have heard of it, but they're like, what is it? So I felt like you're like the perfect person to bring in to be like, okay, Andrea's going to kind of share what this is about and kind of demystify a lot of the pieces. And answer some of those questions, which you've beautifully done. And it's just been amazing. So we're kind of moving into that segment now where I kind of be like, okay, is there anything that you would like to share as a collective message or a card pull? So I'm going to throw it back to you, Andrea.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited to do that. And I just want to say too that if anybody has questions of how to get into that work, I'm always here as a resource for anyone to kind of get some pointers on that. I do see that that's an important role that I have. So feel free to reach out and ask me questions about your own journey. But I do have some cards that I pulled that I actually, the first one I pulled, I said, she's not going to believe that I actually pulled this randomly. You're going to think that I made this up and just went searching for it in the deck. But I promise. This was a random card pull from this deck, and I had to chuckle because don't we love how the universe has both such a sense of humor and of love that it brings to us. But this was the first card, this activation card, prosperity.
Oh my God.
Which I chuckle because I work so much with the prosperity sequence, but isn't that just so beautiful? I think it's such a beautiful message, the message of prosperity. And it says the frequency of prosperity supports our feeling of well-being by allowing the inclusion of everything that makes our body, mind, heart, soul, and spirit sing. I mean, that's just beautiful right there. And I think it's really a reflection of the work that you're doing here, Benita, as well, in creating this space. And then I also pulled this lovely little word card, mobilize, which is just perfect too in terms of inspiring all of us into action. And it says inspire others to action, find the will to get it done, don't wait for your time, create it. And I think this is a nod to us because we both finally did get our podcast out the door. Which was great and not always easy to do. And it's also a call to action for all of your listeners to don't hold back your magic. We're so needed right now. 2023 is so on fire. And then finally, again, another nod to that, the mystical shaman card, which is such a beautiful card. And there's just one line in this, which is really encapsulating the whole thing. And it says, this is a sign of manifesting a life beyond your wildest dreams. So here it is, right here today. This is for everyone watching. This is your call.
Oh my gosh. And I just love it. Like you said, is the universe is always like right there, kind of like playing along with us. The fact that these were the cards that you pulled for our
Mhm.
session today, it just fits in beautifully. And
Yeah.
one thing I did want to say, like Andrea was sharing, of course, all of Andrea's information will be in all of the bio and description sections, wherever this gets posted. So definitely reach out to her. And she has a beautiful group. She does a lot of wonderful programs where you can kind of attend these mini workshops and get a little sampling, a little flavoring, and then also more time with her, because I think it's so important that there are all these different modalities and tools, but it's also about finding the right person that is a good match for you and you flow with their energy and you feel like, yes, it's going to be a beautiful co-creation together. So I think that's another really important piece of this equation. So I really appreciate that. And I just want to thank you so much, Andrea, today for coming on. This was so much fun. And truly, we could have just kept talking and diving deeper. But I was like, okay, I know that the listeners are probably also like, okay, Vanita, stop making these hour and a half podcasts. We're only wanting to listen for about an hour.
I think that your listeners are going to be so happy for everything you're bringing them. So
Thank
wonderful,
you so much.
wonderful.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. It's just been such a joy, and I'm so excited for not only this information to get out, but for people to be able to connect with you and to really just explore to see if Gene Keys is something that they're getting called to, and to just kind of have some fun exploring it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to have this conversation with you today and to also share a little bit about the work and the work again has its own life. So if you're feeling called to it, whatever way that you find your way to it is the right way for you.
I love that. I love that. And with that, I just want to say thank you again so much. And thank you for everyone that's tuning in today. And I look forward to catching you on the next episode.